Hi, I'm Paul Peterson.
And I'm Leslie Finger. We've discussed the fundamentals of charter schools, and now we're going to discuss broadly the different types of charter schools. Paul, generally speaking, what are the major types of charter schools?
Well, you can classify charter schools, generally speaking, into three broad types. The moms and pops, the education management organizations, or EMOs, and the charter management organizations, or the CMOs.
Let's start with the mom and pop charter schools. So what are they, and what are the cases for and against them?
Well, these are the standalone charter schools. They are independent. They're run by an entrepreneur. They got a charter from a governmental agency, and they're operating on their own. Most charter schools originally were moms and pops. They were justified under the principle, let 1,000 flowers bloom, and we'll learn which of these flowers are truly blooming flowers. So charter schools that are moms and pops have done fantastic things, and they have failed. There's a huge variety within this category. Now, the case against them, Leslie, is that they all have to reinvent the wheel. They all have to make a case to a government agency that they can run a school. They got to set up a financial management system. They have to define their educational philosophy. They have to find a manager that's competent. They have to find an accounting system that works for them. That can be extremely difficult. Sometimes charter schools collapse because of their financial problems, not because of their educational philosophy or their inability to teach kids. So the moms and pops are all over the place.
What about the for-profit charter schools? What's the case for them?
Well, to be strict and pure about this, there's no such thing as a for-profit charter school because you have to be a nonprofit agency in order to get authorized by the government. But having said that, the local board may decide to turn over the entire operation of the school to a for-profit management company. And that's why they're called education management companies, or EMOs, because these companies run the school for the school board. Now, the argument for a for-profit management company is that it has a strong incentive to get it right, to teach kids really effectively, because if they can come up with the right formula and they can replicate it over and over again, then they can become a for-profit firm that makes a lot of money. If they're successful, they're offering a good price, a good product at a low price, they can become like an iPhone or an iPad or a Samsung. These products are good products, and they're being offered at low prices, and they can get the resources to spread very rapidly. So the people who have argued for EMOs have said that's exactly what we need in education. We need to reform education, and the only way we can do that is with a heavy investment of private capital, and they're not going to invest money unless there's a profit to be made. So that's the case that the for-profit EMO companies make.
Okay, but there must be a case against them.
Well, some wonder if the focus is too much on the money at the expense of education. So there's a feeling that the for-profit may make the educational offering more limited than it should be, simply because they want to make money on the deal. Another argument against them is a fear that they will make education a cookie-cutter experience. All schools will look alike. It'll be McDonald's education system. So those are the big arguments against the for-profits. And there's still another one, and that's more political, that for-profits, because education has always been offered in a nonprofit way, either by the government or by private schools that are operated by nonprofit organizations, it's easy to mobilize discontent within the school system, among the teachers, and in the community by saying this is a for-profit firm that's running the schools. So for-profit EMO companies often run into political challenges.
But what about these nonprofit charter schools? What are they?
Yes, the CMOs, the nonprofit charter management organizations, They are very popular today. These organizations are running multiple schools in more than one location, and they are getting substantial resources from large foundations such as the Gates Foundation, the Walton Foundation, the Broad Foundation. All of these and many other foundations are giving money to CMOs. Their theory is, let's identify the successful moms and pops, the ones that really made it, and let's give them the resources they need to replicate their schools elsewhere. They have developed a model that works. Let's help them spread it. So they have poured a lot of additional resources into education, and these schools are able to take government funds and private foundation funds to support some pretty exciting schools. They also have the advantage of not being a for-profit EMO, and so therefore they don't get the same political backlash that the EMOs receive.
What kinds of schools have received the most support from these foundations you mentioned?
Well, the foundations have decided that the schools that are working are the no excuses charter schools that are serving inner city students. These schools use high energy teachers for long school days and provide highly repetitive instruction that's designed to make up for learning deficiencies of the students coming from disadvantaged homes. They impose strong school discipline. They require school uniforms. They praise their students. They emphasize that everyone's going to go to college, that everybody can do it, that there are no excuses. They're tired of excuses, no more excuses. So these are known as the no excuses schools. They've had some impressive successes. They have their critics, but they have very strong support from the foundation community.
Going back to CMOs more generally, are there any negatives?
Although they're very popular, there's some question as to how much they can grow. Foundations seem to have a lot of money, but when you compare that to the true cost of education, foundations are pretty much a drop in the bucket. They can help you get started. They can pay for the initial costs. They can help you build the building. But in the end, it's going to be government resources that are going to help keep charter schools in operation. Remember that charter schools are public schools that receive government money. They may not get quite as much as the district does, but the government is still paying the lion's share of the cost of all charter schools. So that's one issue. Will the foundations have enough resources to grow CMOs in many places? And the second problem is whether the no excuses model is something that can be sustained over the long run. It requires amazingly intense efforts by the staff of the school, and teachers wear out and move on, and can this model really be sustained over the long run for large numbers of schools? That question has yet to be answered.
Paul, what do you see as the best case for charter schools?
Well, we're going to look at some of the research evidence on charter school effectiveness in the next section. But to get the best case for charters, I spoke with Nina Reese, the CEO and president of the National Alliance for Public Charter Schools. Here's what she had to say about charter schools and why she thinks they provide better and more equal educational opportunity. I'm pleased to have Nina Reese with me this afternoon. She's the president of the National Alliance for Public Charter Schools. Nina, you have been a supporter of charter schools for a long time. Why do you think they provide a better education? What makes charter schools something special?
Sure. So charter schools are founded on the notion that by giving more freedom and flexibility to local leaders, to parents, to educators, to entrepreneurs, to run schools in exchange for raising student achievement, in exchange for outcomes, you'll be able to get better returns. And so far, over the past 20 years, a lot of charter schools have proven just that.
But not all of them. So a lot of people say that there's as many charter schools that aren't proving effective as there are successful ones. So does that make you nervous about the charter school idea?
So it's important to note that charter schools are not a monolith. Each state has a different charter school law. A lot of charter school laws, those who were initially put in place when charter schooling first became famous, were not premised on the notion of closing the achievement gap, for instance. So the focus on accountability and raising student achievement is something that we are now holding charter schools accountable against, and it's very important that we continue doing that. But having said that, I think if we want all charter schools to be effective, we have to make sure that every state law places a premium on raising student achievement and closing the achievement gap, and greater investments in making these laws look a little bit more alike will then be able to answer the question you ask, which is whether charters as a whole are doing well academically. What I do know is this: most of the research done on charter schools tend to show that charter schools in inner city settings do a better job of educating students compared to their peers in the traditional public school system, especially when it comes to serving low-income students, African American students, and Latino students. We need to do a lot more. Just being better than the traditional public schools in inner cities is not enough. But within that, the category of schools that are doing well, there is a good growing number of charter school management organizations that are knocking it out of the park. They're doing things that we never thought were possible.
So what do they do? What are these special charter schools that are hitting the ball out of the park doing that makes them so terrific?
So I would say the one thing they all have in common is this no excuses mentality, which is that all students can learn and that they're not going to make poverty an excuse for poor achievement. They have dedicated educators who are willing to burn the midnight oil despite the fact that they're not making as much as they would if they were in the traditional public school system. The teachers in charter schools come into this work as a mission and make sure that everything that they're doing is focused on, raising the odds.
That sounds wonderful, but isn't this burnout? I mean, when you come in and you've got to work and burn the midnight oil, don't you just finally burn out?
Some of them do. I would argue that so long as you're doing your best in that school and student test scores are going up, then that's definitely worth investing time and energy. And when education is one of those sectors where we think once a teacher starts, they should stay a teacher for the rest of their lives. We don't look at it as a profession where you can come and teach a few years and leave. I think so long as what's happening in the school is a high quality education, then the mobility rates are not quite as important. Having said that, a lot of teachers in charter schools, especially those in the CMO and EMO sector.
What do you mean by CMO
These
and
are
EMO?
charter school management organizations. So just to give you a little bit of a data dump on charter schooling right now. 12% of charter schools are run by education management companies. These are for-profit education companies. 20% are run by CMOs or charter school management companies. These are nonprofits that operate charter schools, and they run anywhere between 2 to 3 to up to 144 charter schools in the case of KIPP. And 144 is at the very high end. Most of them are doing roughly 20 or so. What I'm trying to say is a lot of the teachers in these networks end up growing in the network and assuming different types of roles. So even though they may not be teachers for the rest of their lives, they are staying within the network and contributing to the education, the overall education of the students.
So what's the growth trajectory for charter schools?
That's a good question. So we've been around for 20 years. There are about 6,400 public charter schools right now serving 2.5 million students. Over the past 5 years, every year we've added between 400 and 500 new charter schools. I believe last year we added 600 new charter schools and closed 200. I think that growth will continue unless states started to place caps, and I don't see that to happen. I think the demand for charter schools is high. If you look at the number of families on waiting lists to attend charter schools, right now we have close to 1 million names on these charter school wait
If
lists.
there's all this demand, why don't they grow faster?
They should. So, and that's why the National Alliance is in business. I would say that the key barrier right now to the growth of charter schools stems from a couple of factors. One is, the greater focus on accountability that states have placed, which is a good thing, has also slowed the growth. So you don't have a lot of legislatures passing laws that let 1,000 flowers bloom anymore. You have a more coordinated and careful approach to growing charter schools. And I think, back when chartering first came on the scene, it attracted a lot of entrepreneurs like those who founded KIPP, who came with a concept but without a lot of background. And right now I would say that a lot of individuals we probably would want to attract to the space are not attracted because of all the paperwork and bureaucracy associated with it. We need to find a way to make sure we're still attracting those individuals and making this space an attractive one for them to experiment. Charter schools are supposed to be first adopters, and so going back to the basics of chartering as laboratories of innovation and development is pretty important.
Well, this is all very fascinating. Thank you, Nina, for these insights into the charter school world.
Sure.